what if we could be more as well? Make smarter use of our resources, build a company as strong as some of our products, and help make other companies even more successful? How do we give our people the power and opportunity to find the next future and cultivate curiosity for generations to come? For the next mind that sees a rock can become something so much more.
Sorry. No, not you. Oops.
Any technical difficulties today. In the unlikely event we lose audio or webcast connection, please stand by and allow us time to resolve the issue and resume the meeting, or otherwise provide an update about the meeting.
Man, I can't.
If a technical disruption prevents us from continuing the meeting and the meeting is not that during today's meeting, we'll make certain predictive statements that reflect our current views about 3M's future performance and financial results. These statements are based on certain assumptions and expectations of future events that are subject to risks and uncertainties. Item 1A of our most recent Form 10-Q lists some of the most important risk factors that could cause actual results to differ from our predictions. The forward-looking statements are also included in today's meeting agenda, shown at the bottom right corner of the webcast screen.
I'm having problems hearing
shareholders
it.
may submit questions
Just let me do it,
electronically
please.
during the meeting by typing your question in the box located at the bottom left corner of the webcast screen. Shareholders also have had the opportunity to submit questions via proxy vote website in advance of the meeting. We will respond to these questions following the conclusion of the meeting business items in accordance with the procedural rules. We also intend to address questions pertinent to the meeting that are not answered today, either by direct response or postings online at our Investor Relations website. Now let me introduce 3M's
quorum is present, and that all shareholders of record have been sent a notice of this meeting. On the record date of March 17, 2020, there were approximately 575 million shares of common stock issued and outstanding. 83% are represented here today, online or by proxy. Therefore, I call this meeting to order. As noted, the polls are open. To vote, click on the Vote Here button on the bottom right-hand corner of the webcast screen. The polls will remain open until the conclusion of the matters to be voted on portion of this meeting. We have 4 business items on the agenda for today, which Ivan will conduct. Following the business items, I will make some brief remarks. Then we will address shareholders' questions and comments. It is now my privilege to introduce our Board of Directors, who are attending today's meeting through this live webcast, in addition to myself. Tony Brown, retired Group Vice President, Global Purchasing, Ford Motor Company. Pam Craig, retired Chief Financial Officer, Accenture. Dave Dillon, retired Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, The Kroger Company. Mike Eskew, retired Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, United Parcel Service. Herb Henkel, retired Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, Ingersoll Rand. Amy Hood, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, Microsoft Corporation. Muhtar Kent, retired Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, The Coca-Cola Company. Dambisa Moyo, Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Mildstorm. Greg Page, retired Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, Cargill. And Pat Wirtz, retired Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, ADM Company. Before turning the call over to Ivan, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank Ed Liddy, who has reached the mandatory retirement age for our board members and is no longer eligible to stand for re-election. Ed's leadership, guidance, and counsel have been invaluable throughout his 20 years as a 3M director. I thank him for his many contributions to our board and the company. I wish Ed and his family a happy and healthy future. Thank you, and I will now turn the program over to Ivan. Ivan.
Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. Before discussing the business items, please note that both the meeting agenda and the rules of conduct and procedures are posted at the bottom right-hand corner of the webcast screen. The rules and procedures are summarized on the screen here. They help ensure that we have a fair and orderly meeting. As noted, the polls are open. If you've not already voted your shares or wish to change your vote, you may do so by clicking on the Vote Here button at the bottom right-hand corner of the webcast screen. The polls will remain open until the conclusion of the matters to be voted on portion of the meeting. Our board appointed Broadridge Financial Solutions to act as the inspector of election to the meeting. PricewaterhouseCoopers, our independent auditors, are also attending today's meeting through this live webcast. We will now review the matters to be voted on. Under the company's bylaws, the only matters properly before our shareholders today are those set forth in the notice of annual meeting and proxy statement. As the agenda indicates, the board of directors is presenting 3 proposals, and a shareholder is presenting 1 proposal, all of which are described in the proxy statement. No other items of business will be considered at the meeting. The first proposal is to elect 11 directors for a 1-year term that expires at the 2021 annual meeting. The board's nominees are Tony Brown, Pam Craig, Dave Dillon, Mike Eskew, Herb Henkel, Amy Hood, Muhtar Kent, Dambisa Moyo, Greg Page, Mike Roman, and Pat Wirtz. All nominees are standing for re-election to the board. The second proposal is to ratify the Audit Committee's appointment of PricewaterhouseCoopers as 3M's independent registered public accounting firm for 2020. The third proposal is to approve on an advisory basis our executives' compensation as described in the proxy statement. The board recommends a vote for each nominee and for each of these proposals. We will now consider the shareholder proposal on setting target amounts for CEO compensation. Katrina Fitzgerald represents the proponent and may make a brief 3-minute statement on the merits of the proposal. Ms. Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Ivan. Good morning, all. My name is Katrina Fitzgerald, and on behalf of the United Steelworkers, I hereby move Proposal 4, which asks our company to consider pay grades and salary ranges of all 3M employees when setting target amounts for CEO compensations. Studies have shown that using peer group benchmarks to set CEO compensation can lead to pay inflation. Without taking into account the pay grades or salary ranges of all company employees, CEO pay tends to outpace the pay of average employees. Our company claims that it maintains global business practices to ensure that its compensation practices are fair and reasonable for both executive and non-executive employees. But the reality is, in 2019, annual total compensation for our CEO was above $18.3 million, while our median employee made $57,494. The CEO and median employee ratio in 2019 was 319 to 1, which is even higher than the ratio of 309 to 1 last year. At 3M's manufacturing facilities in St. Paul and Fairmont, Minnesota, in Midwestern United States, where 3M's median employee pay was pulled from, the essential workers received a 2.4% wage increase from 2018 to 2019, while our CEO base salary and total compensation increased by 8%. The pay disparity is even wider in a longer time span. From 2015 to 19, pay increase for production workers in Minnesota was in the range of 6.9% to 9.8%, while the CEO pay increased by 29.9%. The current pay system of determining CEO compensation without taking into account the pay average of company employees has led to a glaring inequality between executives who sit at the top and essential workers who make the company what it is today and report to work during this trying time. 3M's Code of Conduct says our core business conduct principles are to be good, to be honest, and to be fair. These are principles for all 3M employees. We need to take a step to realize the values that our company seeks to achieve. I urge you to vote for Proposal 4. Thank you.
Thank you for your views, Ms. Fitzgerald. The board opposes your proposal for the following reasons. The company uses global compensation practices to ensure fair and reasonable employee compensation. We benchmark pay components to those of other premier companies and adjust them as necessary to attract, retain, and motivate employees at all levels throughout the company. We then disclose the process by which our board's compensation committee, which consists entirely of independent directors, sets CEO compensation for all shareholders to review and assess. And for the last 5 years, our advisory say on pay proposal has received an average of over 94% of votes cast by our shareholders in support of the compensation of our CEO and other named executive officers. Finally, the actions requested in the proposal to consider the pay grades and salary ranges of 96,000 employees when setting CEO compensation would impose significant implementation costs and burden company resources without discernible benefit. For these reasons, the board recommends voting against this proposal. This concludes the review of the matters to be voted on. The polls are now closed. I will now turn the meeting back to our chairman. Mike?
Thank you, Ivan. I've been advised that the ballots have been counted, and subject to a final tabulation, I can give you the preliminary results provided by the Inspector of Election. Our shareholders have elected all board nominees for a one-year term. You have ratified PricewaterhouseCoopers as 3M's independent public accounting firm for 2020. You have approved the compensation of our executives.
It is all the way
Finally, the one shareholder proposal was not approved. The final voting results will become part of the record of the meeting and will be reported in a Form 8-K to be filed in connection with the matters voted upon at this meeting. All business items have been completed, and the meeting is now adjourned. Before Q&A, I will make some brief comments about everything we are doing to help lead the response to COVID-19. In this unprecedented time, I could not be more proud of how our team has stepped up to help lead the fight against this pandemic. Our response throughout COVID-19 has been guided by our purpose and shaped by three principles. First, an uncompromising commitment to the safety of our employees. Second, attacking the pandemic with urgency from all angles, including protecting healthcare workers and first responders. And third, maintaining business continuity, executing actions to deliver for our customers and shareholders, and to lead out of the economic slowdown. In January, we mobilized 3M's Crisis Action Team to coordinate our response to COVID-19, which, as I mentioned, starts with protecting our people. We moved quickly to implement remote work where possible, and we have instituted robust safety and cleaning protocols in our plants, distribution centers, and other facilities. For 3Mers personally affected, we've established pandemic support policies to help protect their pay and benefits and allow them to take care of themselves and their families. As we protect our employees, we continue to work urgently to protect the public, including heroic nurses, doctors, and first responders. Beginning in January, we doubled our global output of N95 respirators to 1.1 billion per year, or about 100 million per month, including 35 million per month in the U.S. We've made additional investments and are working with the Department of Defense to double annual production once again to 2 billion by the end of this year. And as we expand our capacity, we are also prioritizing supplies to the most critical needs. Within days of regulatory approval, we redirected more than 90% of our respirators into healthcare, with the rest deployed to other critical industries such as energy and food. In addition, as the pandemic unfolds globally, we are working with governments to address trade restrictions and regulatory standards so we can redirect supplies around the world. For example, in April, 3M and the U.S. government announced a plan to import 166 million respirators, primarily from our China plant, and I thank the administration for their partnership. At the same time, we continue to aggressively fight fraud, price gouging, and other unethical activity. 3M has published our prices for N95 respirators, created a fraud hotline, and filed multiple lawsuits. And we're working with law enforcement to pursue and deter unscrupulous behavior. 3M is leading from a position of strength, and in this crisis, the benefits of our business model, including our global capabilities, have never been clearer. Our greatest capabilities are here in the U.S., where we have nearly 80 manufacturing plants and distribution centers across 29 states. Globally, we have plants and distribution centers in 54 countries to be close to customers and better serve the unique needs of regional markets. This model has enabled us to respond to COVID-19 with agility and at scale, while maintaining business continuity and strong customer service. The majority of our plants and distribution centers around the world remain operational, and we've maintained a consistent and reliable supply of raw materials,
Not
enabling
YouTube,
us
you
to
can play a
continue to
game.
serve customers across our businesses and geographies. And to support 3Mers impacted by shutdowns due to weak demand or government mandates, we have implemented a short-term paid furlough program. We are also executing financial actions to deliver 2020 and set us up for success in 2021. We're maintaining critical investments in organic growth through R&D, including in personal safety, and we remain committed to our dividend as a high priority for capital allocation. At the same time, we have implemented sharp spending reductions, suspended our share repurchase program, and adjusted our CapEx plans to align with the external environment. To wrap up, the fundamentals of 3M are strong, and our four priorities, portfolio, transformation, innovation, and people and culture, have positioned us to lead through this fast-changing situation. This will enable us to continue to deliver for all of our stakeholders during the pandemic and emerge even stronger as the economy recovers. I thank all 3Mers for your tremendous work. And going forward, we'll continue to do all we can to protect our people, protect our enterprise, and help the world get through this crisis.
Okay.
That concludes my remarks, and I will now turn it over to Bruce to help facilitate the Q&A. Bruce.
Thank you, Mike. Our first question is from a shareholder, and it's in regards to, has 3M management identified any single country source of supply for essential materials that could threaten one or more product lines in other countries if the supply of that material is interrupted?
Yeah, thank you for the question. During the pandemic, the benefits of our global business model have never been clearer. Our strategy has been to have local and regional capabilities close to customers and markets around the world. We have a very diverse basket of raw materials. We spend approximately $8 billion annually. No one raw material in that basket makes up more than a few $100 million. Our global sourcing team is continuously managing our raw materials, sources of supply on both a local or regional level and a global level. And this includes having multiple sources of supply for critical raw materials. During this pandemic, we have not seen any significant issues sourcing raw materials to date. And looking ahead, we continue to expect and plan to manage our sources of supply. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, Mike, our next question comes from several shareholders, including a Mr. Searles, a Mr. Ehrman, and the Carpenters Union Pension Fund. And it's in regards to disruption to the company's manufacturing operations, particularly in China, due to geopolitical risks related to the pandemic. And what is 3M doing to shift our source of supply chains out of China to lessen our dependence on them as a key manufacturing source?
Well, as I said, our business model is to build capabilities close to customers and markets. And as an example, we invest in local or regional manufacturing and supply chains to serve those local customers. This strategy has really served us well, particularly important now as we supply healthcare workers and first responders along with other important markets and customers. The U.S. is where we have our greatest capability. More than half of our global manufacturing capacity is in the U.S., and we are an exporter of over $5 billion annually to the rest of the world. Relative to the question around China, this is the second largest economy in the world, and we entered China in 1984 to serve local customers, not to export. Our manufacturing capability in China is for customers located in China, and more than 90% of our revenue in China is to customers located in China. We source raw materials locally as well. This is a model that will continue to serve us well as we grow in China. There's one notable exception to our local focus of our China operations, and that is the export of personal protective equipment, or N95 respirators, that is taking place under the Defense Production Act. And this is a very strong working partnership between the U.S. government, the China government, and 3M Company. And we are working very well with FEMA and their air bridge to ship product from our manufacturing in China into the U.S. market at this time of critical need. So it's one exception, very focused on responding and really doing all we can to respond to the pandemic.
Yeah, Mike, our next question came online this morning during the meeting from a Mr. Hodgkins. His question relates to how is 3M handling personal protective equipment problems related with its resellers?
Well, as I've talked about it, we are attacking the pandemic from all angles, and this includes doing all we can to stop illegal and unethical activity that's causing real and serious